Right now on the Citizen Report, details on the historic and bombshell following made this week on behalf of General Michael T. Flynn. Plus, we'll have the latest headlines and, also, a major announcement about our show. The Citizen Report starts now.
This is the Citizen Report with Jonathan Shannon.
And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and thank you for joining us on this first show for the year 2020, and glad you can join us. We want to start first, before we get to those headlines, with a little bit of a recap about what this show is going to be about for those who may just now be starting or just recently started watching our show. And I also want to introduce myself for those of you who might be interested to know a little bit about me. And also, we got a new slogan of sorts that we are implementing officially with this very episode. First, let's start off with a little bit of a summary about what the Citizen Report is about. So the Citizen Report is basically a podcast of sorts that covers current events and headlines, but we want to do so in a way that's in-depth, insightful, and original. We don't want to just copy what everyone else does. We want to be original, and by original, I mean true to ourselves, true to you, and we want to be a show that's truly for America, and I hope that each and every episode we live up to that statement I just made. And actually, in light of that, we are introducing a new slogan as of this episode, and we're calling it "Real In-Depth American." So, kind of self-explanatory there, and hopefully you like that new slogan. I am retiring our slogan. It's basically been around since the days that this was my college podcast, which was Real News America First. I decided to go with something a little more kind of more descriptive, if you will, at least a little bit more descriptive, at least I hope. So hopefully you like our new slogan, Real In-Depth American, and be sure to provide us with feedback. We appreciate it. And now, just briefly, I'm going to introduce myself once more. My name is Jonathan Shannon. I am the host of the Citizen Report. I am 23 years old. I am proud to be an American, if you haven't already figured that out. But I currently live in the Charlotte area, in a kind of a city suburb type of deal called Gastonia. And I'm not from here, though. I was actually born in the Florida Panhandle, in Tallahassee to be exact, the capital city. But I actually grew up in Harrison, Arkansas, and it's a very beautiful part of the country, I might add. And that is where I cultivated, well, let me say this first. It's where I became a Christian, and that to me is not even by a close margin, the most important element to my identity. I believe that as a Christian, it is Jesus being my Savior, that is the most truly, and I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart, that being a Christian, belonging to Jesus, and Him being my Savior, that is the most important element to my identity. Everything else I talk about is about being for America and all that stuff. All of that is in response, or thereafter. That is. But being a Christian, for me, is the single most important element to my identity. That is who I am by definition. And I just felt like I needed to say that, and I truly mean that as well. I really do. And that, in while I was living in Harrison, Arkansas, I cultivated a passion, a desire to become a broadcaster. Originally, I was going to go down towards, this is, I'm talking about somebody that was like 8 or 9 or 10 years old. I was probably leaning more towards becoming a TV meteorologist, because I am very, very well-versed and passionate about weather, and that is something, by the way, we'll talk about from time to time as need be on the Citizen Report. And but over time, at least, I became more and more interested in the current events and stuff. And I've always been interested in watching newscasts, but it just became even more clear to me that I like to be in the news side of things, and that is what I hope to do here with the Citizen Report. And as I said, I grew up in Harrison, Arkansas, and now and I've lived a couple other places thereafter. I lived in the Knoxville area for a few years, and I part-time lived, and by part-time I really mean the summer, basically. Also lived in South Florida for a time during that same time. And now the December of 2020 will be 10 years on since we got this house here in Gastonia, North Carolina, and this is where I now live. That's pretty much the short of it. Hopefully you appreciated that little bit of information about myself. I just want to say before we get to the other headlines that I appreciate you watching, and I truly mean that, or watching or listening. This is really an audio right now, but since I'm putting it up on YouTube, but my point being is that I truly appreciate your loyalty and your viewership, and I hope however long or short this podcast exists, I declare now that it is my intent to be true to you, true to myself, and I am going to be I'm not going to be a sellout. Let me put it to you that way. I believe that if we're going to do a newscast, we're going to do it right, and by doing it right, we're going to we're just going to tell you, we're just going to be straight up with you. We're just going to tell you like it is, and I'm not going to pretend to hide my biases on certain things. That's not to say that I'm being unfair. Quite the contrary. I always want to be fair, and by being fair, I mean I want to be. I just want to be, absolutely 100%, for this country. I understand that there might be those out there listening that might not always agree with me, and I respect that. But I hope that with this podcast that we're always true to ourselves and true to you, and that we're just going to be ourselves and tell it like it is. The current events, news, and information pertinent to current events and headlines. All right, so I'm already 7 minutes into this, it looks like. So we want to definitely get over to headlines now. And at the top of the show, I teased about General Michael T. Flynn. There has been a motion filed in the U.S. District Court, District of Columbia. This was filed on the 14th, so when I'm recording this, that was 3 days ago. And it is a scorched earth type of deal. There's no other way to put it. It is truly a scorched earth, and by scorched earth, I mean they do not hold back. They do not mince words, at least not many words, in saying that he's been wronged by the government. And if you've been paying attention at all to about Michael T. Flynn, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, let me just give you a quick upsummer and just say that General Michael T. Flynn, he was basically framed by the deep state, and I'm just gonna be forthright in saying that is what happened. He was framed. It was a process crime. They said he said things that weren't true, and actually what it really was that they were just framing him from the outset. They were trying to make him do something that they could twist and make it out to be against him because he's a close Trump ally, and he's I have to say, I don't think there's many people in this country that's more of a patriot than he is. Michael T. Flynn, General Michael T. Flynn. And so the deep state, Stroke and others and associates, they in the Mueller team, they went after him, and now it's completely backfiring, if I might just be forthright in saying. And I do want to tell you, because what happened was Michael Flynn filed or entered into a guilty plea, but it was basically I'm gonna go as far as to suggest it was under duress. I do not, of course, he's not guilty of anything. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But he did enter into a guilty plea. He has now rescinded that guilty plea, and in fact, which is what this document did. This is what I'm going to go to page 3 here, and you can actually look this up yourself and read exactly what I'm going to read. I'm only going to read just a little bit, just to give you a little idea of what just happened here with Michael T. Flynn in this document. Here's what it says. Quote, Michael T. Flynn, and they got parentheses, Mr. Flynn, that's to say, in this document he'll be referred to as Mr. Flynn, hereby moves to withdraw his plea because of the government's bad faith, vindictiveness, and breach of the plea agreement. I'm going to skip a little bit, and here's something else as well. Mr. Flynn also requests a continuance of the sentencing date set for January 28, 2020 for 30 days or until February 27, 2020 or such other subsequent day that is convenient to the court and counsel, and a corresponding extension of time to file any supplemental sentencing memorandum which is from January 22nd, 2020 to February 21st, 2020. The continuance is requested to allow time for the government to respond to the most recent aspects of this motion, and for Michael Flynn, or for Mr. Flynn, to provide the additional briefing he needs to protect the record and his constitutional rights in light of significant developments in the last 30 days. And I'm just going to say this, and this is going off of memory, but from what I remember some months back, which was Michael Flynn, he was denied exculpatory evidence. And if you don't know what exculpatory evidence means, exculpatory evidence is it's a legal term that means evidence that basically proves that you're innocent. And such evidence existed, but the government basically hid it. They weren't forthright to the court and saying, look, we do have this at least potentially or just outright exculpatory evidence in favor of General Flynn. That did not happen, and obviously that came to light that Mr. Flynn was innocent, that there was evidence to prove his innocence. And now, in light of all this, and all these developments have just been going on and on and on, now we see the guilty plea rescinded. Mr. Flynn now is pleading not guilty. Obviously, there's no other way to put it. But it's a significant development because this again undermines the whole premise of the Mueller debacle investigation. And now we see that we see now that all this is starting to unravel for the deep state. Once again, it is completely backfiring on them, and I think that this is not going to end well for the deep state. In this case, as Dave at X22 report says, that Flynn's going to go free. I mean, it's going to happen, and I think he is. I think General Flynn will go free. And this will, again, exonerate even President Trump, because all of this, the whole premise of everything ever done by the deep state with all these cases and ongoing stuff, it's to get at Trump, President Trump. And now we see all this starting to unravel. And it's just fascinating to watch how that these darts that the deep state fires at the Trump administration, they at first look bad. I mean, the media upplays it and they say, oh, it's the end of the world, and then, as a Christian, you think, well, it just, you just think, well, the only thing now is Jesus is going to come back, or, he's going to have to come back, because if they take out Trump, I mean, it's over, because they'll never allow another patriot to get into the White House if they ever had their way, which they won't, in my opinion. But all that to say, I think that we are watching an historic process occur with this country. I think we're seeing the tides turn back in favor of the good people of this country. And I think that, and I'm just going to go off, I was actually planning to touch on this, but I wasn't sure how I was going to bring it up exactly. But I will say, to segue over to Virginia, I went to Virginia last month. And by Virginia, I'm referring, of course, to the whole thing about the state legislature. They're going to try to start usurping the Second Amendment in every which way possible. And I think that they're panicking. I think the deep state's panicking. And I think you're seeing the death throes right now. I think that you're seeing the deep state go completely, like it's like a rabid animal in a corner. And I'm just going to tell you exactly as I see it. I see it as I see the deep state as a rabid animal in a corner, and that's the most dangerous, because once it gets cornered, it starts attacking, lashing out like there's no tomorrow. And that's exactly what you're seeing right now. They are trying to destroy the Constitution, the God-given rights, and I said it before on the Citizen Report many episodes back, and I'll say it again. Our rights in the Constitution do not come from the government. Do not allow any person to ever tell you otherwise. Our rights come directly from God, and they are ours to have and to hold forever. We have a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And the deep state, and I say deep state, we're talking about like the leftists, primarily the Democrat Party, but even some in the Republican Party, who we would call rhinos, which is an acronym for Republicans in name only. They are trying to take away those constitutional rights, and it's time for us to wake up and realize this. I cannot underscore this enough. I believe that the deep state is trying. They are in that corner. They are that rabid animal. They are trying to attack. They know their time is short, and they've got to do something right now. And that's why you're seeing them try to remove President Trump. That's why you're trying to see them take away. Because here's the thing. The Second Amendment, and I know I'm going completely off onto this, but I feel like sometimes I just turn on the mic and I feel like there are certain things that once I get into, I realize I just feel it in my gut that I need to talk about. And this is something I feel like 100% of me feels like I need to talk about. And that is, yes, we have, you can go out and hunt, you can go out and, target practice, go out into the gun range. But the Second Amendment is for self-defense, but it's actually for a broader purpose than that. It is to protect against any tyranny that could ever form. It's not to be violent. Don't get me wrong. That's not to say that it's for violence. It's quite to the contrary. It's like President Reagan, that peace through strength, and that's exactly on a macro level, if you will, of this country. That is the Second Amendment, that peace through strength. That it was like the Japanese. They knew they never stood a chance. Like, there was not even a snowball's chance in hell, if I may say that they could ever take this country, because so many of it, there would be a person with a gun behind every blade of grass, and that's true, because absolutely, if the Japanese, if the country of Japan of that day decided to invade, they were going to be met with a force to be reckoned with. Not only that, but a country with God on its side, in my opinion. And that's why you see they got to get rid of the Second Amendment, because if they can get rid of the Second Amendment, they can more directly and more efficiently control the masses. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. I think you're seeing them panicking and realizing we need to get rid of these rights, because we can't control the people if we don't. And it just amazes me. It amazes me that people take these people in Congress. They go up there, they take an oath of office, they swear an oath to defend, to protect and defend this, to protect our Constitution. to uphold and defend it, I should say. And it's just like, the Constitution means nothing to them. And it's not without reason, because they want to destroy the Constitution. They want to destroy your rights. They want to be able to tell you what you can or cannot do. And I just hope that you just understand that we are very blessed to be in this country. I'm not saying this country's perfect. I'm not beginning to suggest that at all. But I just feel like that we need to embrace the rights that we have, God-given rights. And only when we do that and we come together in perfect understanding that as a country we have these God-given rights, and that we must defend against tyranny, then tyranny cannot stand. Here's something that evil cannot prevail if good men do something, but evil will prevail to a point. God won't allow it go to an absolute degree, but only when good men stand down does evil prevail to any level, like you see in the governor of Virginia and the state legislature. And to circle back onto Virginia. If you live in Virginia, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, your state's gone completely it's gone completely affront to the Constitution. And here's another thing. And actually, I forgot to pull this up before I started this, so it may take me a moment or two to get this. But there's apparently a long-standing invitation by the state legislature of West Virginia to basically allow counties of Virginia to join their state. And from what I'm hearing, it's absolutely constitutional. You have every right to do that. Now, there is a problem, though, and that is that I do remember, even from memory, that in the Constitution, you have to have the consent of all legislatures involved. And I'll have to reread that again to make sure that it does actually require that, if you're not even talking about creating a new state, but just changing the border, so to speak. And probably, I'm sure there's I don't know if there's I'm just going to guess off the top of my memory that there's a congressional element to it as well. I don't know. I have to verify that. So just take what I just said about the constitutionality of changing a state border with a grain of salt, unless or until I confirm that. But so this is from WTOV Channel 9. I believe, going off of memory, this is probably, I want to say this is a Youngstown station. I forget if this is the Youngstown. No. This would not be Youngstown. Okay, licensed to Steubenville, Ohio. Or also serving Wheeling, West Virginia. Okay, I don't know why I thought Youngstown. Okay. All right, my point being is that now they're apparently sharing an article from a commonly owned station, WCHS WVAH, which, by the way, WTOV, if I understand right, is owned by Sinclair Broadcast Group. I just thought I'd throw that out. But to get to my point, the West Virginia senators approved resolution inviting Frederick County, Virginia, to join Mountain State. So, if I'm understanding this right, because I'm literally reading this as I'm talking, a delegate, Christopher Collins, said in an email, quote, "As a lawyer and legislature, I find that Frederick County still, after this many years, has not closed the books on this issue." And now this article begins, and I'll read this part as well. "The idea of Frederick County, Virginia becoming part of West Virginia is not one just cooked up in the hallways of the Mountain States legislature. A Virginia lawmaker said it has been simmering for a long time." And I'm trying to scour through this. Okay, there we go. This is the meat of it, I think. Let me read this to you. Senator Charles Trump, that's kind of a coincidence, huh? Republican of Morgan, the West Virginia senator who sponsored the resolution extending the invitation to Frederick County, said the Mountain State's path to statehood was paved in 1862 when the Virginia General Assembly authorized West Virginia's status as a state. The Virginia General Assembly specified that Berkeley, Jefferson, and Frederick counties could join the new state, provided voters in those counties approved. While Berkeley and Jefferson county voters cast ballots in favor of joining West Virginia, Trump said he does not believe Frederick County ever had a vote. In 1870, in a case brought by Virginia against West Virginia, the U.S. Supreme Court recognized that the rights of Frederick County to vote and decide whether it wanted to join the new state of West Virginia were, quote, lawfully and permanently reserved by Virginia and Congress. The quote is lawfully and permanently reserved, unquote, by Virginia and Congress, the West Virginia Senate resolution said. So to just kind of summarize all this stuff I've just been saying. Basically, at least in the case of Frederick County, Virginia, there's apparently an argument that can be made. It's currently a Virginia county that it could just simply vote to join West Virginia. Now, that is pretty impressive right there. And that will certainly, even just one county, will set the liberals, the leftists, will just be shaking in their boots because it's just the funny thing is that once people stand up and say, we're not going to tolerate this, you're not taking away my God-given rights, to defend myself. I have a right to be a free citizen of this country, an American citizen. Then, there's no grounds for evil to stand. And, it's just, that I think that's something we just all need to realize, that if we just stand up and say, we're not going to tolerate this, we're going to be free American citizens, then I think that is that right there is enough. Because, here's another thing, and I'll say this, and then I'll quit ranting. If you call it ranting, I'm just talking with you. But the other thing I'll say too is that, we have a right to free will. We have, and it's like when these bodies of government want to say you cannot, for example, freely practice your Christian beliefs. You cannot freely practice, things like that. I'm just using, I'm just envisioning a scenario, okay? But my point being is that God. It is, I believe, God's will that we have free will. We have free will. And when people try to usurp your ability to make decisions for yourself, that's a problem. And something else, and let me say this, and then I'll get to the rundown of headlines, and then also the important announcement. And actually, there is another important announcement. But my point being is that the important thing to realize is that in this country, I was listening to, let me say, I was listening to the end of, I was actually listening to a good deal of Rush Limbaugh today, although he wasn't in. There was some guy, I think he was from Seattle, I want to say, filling in for him. He seemed like a nice guy. I mean, he, had a lot of great things to say. But he was making, a caller called in right at the last bit of the show, and he brought up a profound point to which the guest host basically summarized and rephrased as, about abortion. That, if they can say, where is it that, like basically the case being, and I'll just go ahead and rephrase it for the purposes of this show. If you allow abortion, where does those constitutional unalienable rights begin? Because if you can say that a certain life doesn't, it can just be murdered, and then, certain lives do matter over others, then how is it that the Constitution is equal to all? unalienable rights. We have endowed by our creator certain unalienable rights, and then among these are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. At least roughly, that's what it says. But my point being is that if we allow these things to happen, like the deep state wants to allow, then you must be willing to say that the Constitution, just tear it up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. And that's something, I believe that Virginia is a battleground right now for this country, because they're trying to say, Governor Ralph Northam, I mean, there's so many things I can say about that governor, but I'll just say this. He basically said that if, like a baby, we can make it comfortable, and then the mother and the doctors will have a conversation. Now I'm not 100% certain, but it's my understanding that at least in the opinion of some person, that was within the context of if an abortion was in progress, but the baby survived and was, somehow born alive, which does happen from time to time. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. I just don't. I mean, it's just horrific. It's just diabolical to say you're going to keep the baby comfortable, and yet you're going to decide whether it lives or not. I mean, that's what he's saying. And I am just profoundly astonished that even one person tolerates anything having to do with that. And I think that abortion should be completely illegal. I believe that every baby, really, in my opinion, citizenship should be endowed upon, if I may say, upon conception. I believe citizenship should be immediately granted. I just do. I just think that you either absolutely have constitutional rights in this country, unalienable rights, or you don't. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It didn't say death, except wherefore there's an abortion, or, something like that. You either have a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, or you don't. So I hope, I was trying to provide some unique insight into this, and I hope you stuck with me, and I appreciate it if you did. And but now let's get to and of course, do let me know what you think, and I always welcome feedback. I appreciate hearing from my audience. I do want to just get into the headlines, and this is from johnbwellsnews.com. And since I'm kind of just recapping and kind of re-summarizing what this podcast is on this episode, I just want to say I highly recommend going to this website. It's basically an alternative to Drudge Report, and in my opinion, it's a lot better. It's a lot better executed. And I personally really like John B. Wells. He's a great radio host, TV host. He was a voiceover artist for many years. He was the voice of WFAA television in Dallas. Working in the spirit of Texas, things like that. I mean, he is just an all-around great broadcaster. And so kudos to him for coming together to put together this website. So again, I'll say it one more time. John B, as in the letter B, wellsnews.com. I don't get any kickbacks. I don't get anything from saying that, except I just truly believe in a great product. And I appreciate what he and his operation does. He has a show called Caravan to Midnight. And he also does a over-the-air radio show, I think, called, obviously, because I know, but I believe it's, it's called Arc Midnight. So you got the over-the-internet TV show, so to speak, called Caravan to Midnight, and then the radio show that's actually, that one night is actually over the air, but that one is called Arc Midnight. I just thought I'd throw that out as well. But I'm trying to move along here. But let me get to these headlines, and this is as of today, January 17th, 2020. And this is this is a sampler of some of the headlines. After surprise guilty plea withdrawal, judge in Michael Flynn case delays sentencing again. Senate passes USMCA trade deal 89-10. Iraqi refugee launches GOP challenge to Ilhan Omar. She needs to be stopped, from Fox Wilmington WSFX television. House Republicans demand FISA court explain Carter Page surveillance other missteps, from Fox News. From Zero Hedge, DOJ begins second probe into Comey's history. Let me say that again. DOJ begins second probe into Comey's history of leaking classified intel. From DB Daily Update, let's stop and recognize all the good things happening in America. And there are a lot of things good happening in America. I'll just throw that in there. From trendingviews.co, feds and ICE might be finally investigating Ilhan Omar. From LouRockwell.com, the Russian Prime Minister resigns. From DB Daily Update, did Trump just deliver the greatest week of economic winning in U.S. history? ? From Breitbart, illegal alien from Canada allegedly planned attack at Virginia gun rally. And I was planning to mention this, and I'm going to risk sounding a little bit like a nut here, but I'm going to say it. You need to be careful next week, because here's the thing. I think that it would not surprise me if they tried to stage something to frame the pro-Second Amendment people in Virginia. Just be careful, and if you start seeing headlines come out saying some American patriot did this, I'm just saying, be very careful next week. And if you start seeing headlines like that, always just be cautious about what the news may be trying to say or shape your opinion. I'm just going to leave it at that. And here are a few more headlines. Breaking: James Comey under investigation for allegedly leaking classified info. Lynch Clinton evidence that made Comey take over is revealed. Discussion with social justice millennials. Virginia moves to ratify Equal Rights Amendment 38 years after expiration, by Jonathan Turley. Antifa and this coming political storm. Can we prevent it? ? Powerful winter storm to impact millions across Midwest and Northeast through weekend. Rand Paul will expose every Republican who joins with Democrats. Cheryl Atkinson refiles spying suit, exposes big deep state players. Court advisor says FBI's training video scheme to cover for serial FISA court abuses is seriously bogus. SPLC demands big tech silence conservatives in the name of fighting white supremacist terror. From, Red Flag Nation. Anti-gun laws, sanctuary cities, and the Second Amendment, by John W. Whitehead. Virginia patriots move toward a grand jury indictment of Governor Ralph Northam. I was just clapping there. I gotta love these patriots. I mean, these people that have enough, guts to stand up for their own country. I just got to give kudos to them, because I just think they're great people. Gun groups. Virginia Democrats want violence to disrupt. Smear gun control protests, by Paul Bedard. I think 2A is to say Second Amendment group. And Virginia Citizens Defense League file emergency injunction against governor. Governor's action is illegitimate and cannot be allowed to stand, unquote. I'm pretty sure. Now, let me click on this, because I understand this is a big story right now, and I'm trying to cover this to the degree I think I need to on this show. Now, this is from a website called Guns in the News. I don't think I've ever been on this site before. At least I don't remember it. But this is just linked to John B. Wells News. But here's how the article starts out. Quote, following the cowardly and tyrannical actions of Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, do declare a state of emergency because he is propagandizing the people by saying armed militia groups plan to storm the Capitol. Gun Owners of America and the Virginia Citizens Defense League have filed an emergency injunction against Northam ahead of Monday's lobby day, saying that his actions are, quote, illegitimate and cannot be allowed to stand, unquote. According to GOA's Eric Pratt, quote, his actions infringes on both the First and Second Amendment rights of Virginians who wish to peaceably assemble to petition their government, while at the same time not surrendering their right to self-defense, unquote. Pratt reminds people that the rally has been held annually for years without any such incident. Quote, this rally is held annually with thousands of participants and without incident, unquote, he wrote. Quote, the only difference this year is that in response to the Democrats' attempt to eviscerate the Second Amendment, a much larger crowd is expected, unquote. Guns in the News reports. Incredibly, Northam is using the 2017 rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, in support of his ban on firearms, ignoring the fact that the unfortunate death that day was a vehicular homicide. Northam hasn't made any attempts to ban cars. That's a pretty... I did not expect that. That's pretty funny. The governor hasn't. the governor hasn't. The governor of Virginia hasn't attempted to ban cars. All right. Well, getting back on topic, but continuing in this article, like all gun control, this gun ban could only have negative consequences. If there are in fact any bad actors who would attempt to hijack the rally, they would simply ignore the law. Over the next 24 hours, GOA and VCDL lawyers will be in court fighting the ban. And this article continues, but let me just finish this article by this following quote, we are determined to not let this governor run roughshod over our gun rights, unquote, Pratt said. So, there we go. And I'm going to skip down. I think this is important. This is another headline from John B. Wells News. I'm back on that site. I'm just going to read just simply one more headline here, and it says, quote, be aware next week in Virginia. Signs point to a dark state trap to demonize the Second Amendment and disarm Americans as 2020 becomes, quote, do or die, unquote, for globalists. A well-armed people will never be put into gulags to be re-educated. So, I know that was intense. I know that was a lot to take in, but I felt like that, I felt like I needed to say all this to talk about all this. And I hope you appreciated it. Do let me know. I want to get your feedback on how to improve this podcast, how I can make it better, and to talk, make this a successful podcast. I do have things that down in the works about this podcast that I hope that to be revealing soon. But for now, this is, we're just going to be doing a number of topics and just kind of talk about it. But to kind of put a closer on this show today, I do have a major announcement. And that major announcement is this. My friend David Heller, who is 21 years old, who currently lives in Chandler, Oklahoma, he is going to be officially joining as co-host with effect from Monday. I am actually getting right as soon as I jump off of here, recording this, which will go out either tonight or tomorrow. I'm going to be starting to record that, but I will just say that I look forward to seeing what we can do together on this podcast. So with effect from next week or next, a few days from now on Monday, I will be welcoming him onto the show officially, as in when the show is released. At least hopefully it'll be released on that day. And he will be my co-host. And I just want to say, to reassure everybody, I will continue to remain in the capacity as co-host. I will continue to also remain in the capacity of executive producer, news editor, and I'm gonna still be just, I'm gonna be here just as much as I have been. But I hope this will add to the podcast, having an additional person's insight on current events and things like that. I'm sure y'all will like him. I think he's going to be a great co-host, and I look forward to seeing what will happen with this podcast with him as co-host. So on that note, I just want to cap off the show by thanking y'all for tuning in. Do let me know, as I said earlier. Give me feedback, however you can reach me. I truly value your feedback. If you don't like something I'm doing on this podcast, just be honest with me. I'll appreciate what you have to say, and I respect you for it. Let me know if you like this, if you don't like this, or what you think I should do or shouldn't do on this podcast. I think that it's important to have a two-way conversation with your audience. And actually down the road, depending on how things go, and I'm not saying this will happen, but depending on how things go, we may see about also introducing a talkback feature on this show where I can just have, callers or people basically, well, I don't know about callers, but at least people making comments and stuff, and we can just kind of have a little bit better of a two-way conversation, and keeping true to that phrase. But I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. This has been, this show has been around now since August or so of 2018 as a college podcast, and since November, and it went dormant and ended for a while, and then I brought it back in November of 2019. And now to see it like this, it's just an incredible, it just feels so good to be where we are now. And I just have a good feeling 2020 is going to be a really good year in so many different ways. And I just think that, I just feel like that God's favor is going to be, with the sails of my boat, to use figurative language. I think it's just going to be a great year. I really do. And I'm just truly blessed and honored to be able to do this at all, this podcast. So with that said, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you for you joining in the next podcast. So I'm Jonathan Shannon for the Citizen Report. Have a great night.
The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.